We know that Jesus was scourged violently, extremely violently. The images on the shroud, it's very, very clear from that. This was a brutal torture that he had to endure.
Where he was slapped around the cheek, there's a whiplash to the cheeks, there's the crown of thorns that thrust on his head with the blood flow that comes from it. The wounds of the whiplash that go from the tops of the shoulders down to the bottom of the legs, on both the front and the back of the man of the shroud. The cross that he carried that smudges those wounds across the shoulders. There's the dislocated right shoulder from falling. There's bruised knees. There's a bruise to the tip of the nose and a deviated septum of the nose. And then there's the awful indignity of being crucified naked, with nails through his wrists, the lower part of his hands, through his feet. And I think an ordinary person would have died of the scourge wounds alone, you know, but somehow he had the will to go through it, to stay till that last moment before there was time enough for the burial before the Passover.
So it's fascinating that just this discovery of the shrunken blood cells gives us an indication of not only the extent of the suffering that Jesus suffered, but it also fits in with the known tortures that we can see Jesus must have endured on that day.
The shroud's blood stains would have been tested, and they were found to be human, and they were found to actually be AB. The other thing that's very interesting as well is that many people have wondered why the blood still shows up as red on the actual shroud, and if it's 2,000-year-old blood, why does it still show up as red? And the answer to that is it contains very high levels of an enzyme called bilirubin. And bilirubin is actually produced by the body when it is under extreme pain and torture. And the shroud blood, as you might expect, is full of bilirubin, and that's what still gives it its reddish properties today.
His forgiveness, his love, and his example of how we should live our lives. So I think it's, as we have seen people come and the impact it has on them, the world needs the message of the shroud to bring the reality of Jesus' suffering to a world that so needs it, that so needs his peace, which passes all understanding. The shroud brings hope to people that have got no hope. There are so many people with no hope, and he is our hope.
Non è un'immagine, è una... si sente come se ci fosse una presenza.
Non lo so, già stando qui ho la pelle d'oca. Non lo so quanto la vedrò, che effetto.
Oui, ça ressemble beaucoup, mais enfin on voudrait évidemment, comme tout le monde, être sûr.
The depth of his love for us, that he would do this for us, so undeservingly, so undeserving. And yet that love is beyond anything we can imagine. And so I hope that people seeing the shroud will have a glimpse of how deeply they are loved, how important they are to God, however marginalized or broken they may feel, that God himself chose to be broken on a cross to save them is amazing.
We've then taken that further. We discovered that through tests that were done in the mid-70s using some specific equipment, we discovered that the shading on the shroud actually possesses three-dimensional information, which enables an accurate profile of the body and the face of the man in the shroud.
We also have the carbon-14 testing, which has now been largely discredited by anybody who wants to actually consider and examine the evidence.
Then there was a 5-day examination that took place of the shroud by a team of 30 scientists from the United States. They studied the shroud for 7 days. And their primary objective in making that study was to work out how the image has been formed. What is the image composed of and how was it made? Studying all the photographs, X-ray photographs, fluorescence photographs, ultraviolet photographs, studying samples of material that they extracted from the surface of the shroud. After 3 years, with all that expertise, they still couldn't work out how the image was formed, and they couldn't reproduce the image. And that still pertains today. We still cannot reproduce the shroud image.
Many people have tried to replicate the image with varying degrees of success. I believe that the closest anyone has come to replicating the image was actually shining ultraviolet light against the cloth, and they were able to achieve a slight discoloration of the cloth, which replicates many of the properties that we see of the image on the shroud. However, even with 21st century technologies, there is not enough ultraviolet light in the world to replicate a full body image front and back. All of the evidence, the image itself, and indeed the information that we found on the cloth shows that no medieval forger would have been able to have put all that together.
There are some properties of this remarkable cloth which cannot be explained even by today's technology, even by today's instrumentation, and by any scientist. We still don't know how the image was formed. We still cannot replicate the image. Even using today's instrumentations, today's methods, let alone the techniques that were available to a medieval artist or somebody in the bygone times. That really confirms that there is something really quite extraordinary and quite remarkable about this cloth. Sets it apart from any historical object that we have ever come across. The Shroud of Turin is a cloth, dates the time of Christ.
The image of a crucified man.
You see the depth of suffering that he underwent. The whiplashes down his back and down his front. Whiplash across his face. Just the nailing through his hands and through his feet. This body that's so badly beaten, so badly tortured.
That is a message that our world needs to hear.
It's an absolute living miracle that you can actually see.
I think it's something unique, big emotion.
This was the true burial cloth that was used to cover the body of Jesus Christ in the tomb.
In what it teaches us of the nature of the Passion of Christ.